um, website. If you are going to issue an RFP for a service provider or a job listing for a new executive director, MAPERS does have board listings, so you can post those positions there. Very often there's questions that administrators have or boards have with regards to issues on, how much do you pay your administrator? Does your plan provide this form of benefit? Those sort of things. MAPERS does have a listserv form and sometimes issues surveys, so those are available. And then certainly we have RFP samples available for you as a starting draft on the MAPERS website. Jim's having just way too much fun there in the background. We all see that. He's at the sheriff's office today because they had an unexpected guest come in. And so he's trying to manage a lot of things on that end. So, all right, past webinars. Here's a list of some of the webinars. If your board is still struggling a little bit with either not having meetings or just struggling with the virtual format, I did do a webinar early on when I think it was March or April, on how to do a virtual board meeting and some of the best practices. And so that's certainly available. I know Aaron Castle from my office did a recent legal update with all the cases that typically we do at the fall conference. And then there's some investment related webinars that have also occurred with regards to the impact of COVID on the markets and things of that nature. So here's a list of the past webinars. They are available. If you missed them, you can go on to the MAPERS website. They're all recorded and you have the ability to download those and take a look at those. Some of the COVID-19 plan considerations. Certainly you should be fully aware of all the governor's executive orders as they impact the Open Meetings Act, most specifically, especially if you're doing virtual meetings. There's fairly good consensus from one community to the next. There are some discrepancies in terms of how people are interpreting those executive orders with the Open Meetings Act, but certainly there's a fair amount of consistency. You want to make sure you're up to date on those and conducting your meetings if you're doing them in a virtual format in compliance with the Open Meetings Act and the governor's executive orders. There have been some executive orders granting a little bit more discretion and relief under the Freedom of Information Act. So you want to make sure you're aware of those as well. The CARES Act does have some provisions in it. If you're not familiar with the CARES Act, especially if your plan administers a defined contribution plan and or a 457 plan, the impact of the CARES Act in CARES related distributions are very important for you to be familiar with. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that today, but want you to be aware of that. One of the other issues that's really something your plan should be concerned with, or at least aware of the impact, if your employer is doing furloughs or workplace reductions or work reductions, how do those reductions impact the crediting of service within your plan and or employee contributions? We recognize that many plans have certain number of hour requirements to receive a month of service credit and so many months to receive a year of service credit, that sort of stuff. So you want to make sure if the employer is doing any form of furloughs that there's a good understanding of what the impacts of those will be upon service credit. And certainly then correspondingly employee contributions to the plan. Am I not receiving service credit for a period of time in which I am required to make employee contributions is an issue for some plans to take a look at. And then finally, just as we talk about elections and NOAA talks about elections, many of our plans do have trustee elections coming up. A police, fire, or an employee rep term is up and you need to conduct an election. I would encourage you, especially since we're working in this virtual format, to spend some time and look at your trustee election policies and procedures and come up with a way of conducting an election that meets the needs of your workforce and your members and still complies with the need for social distancing and things of that nature. And then finally, some recent trends, plans, considerations for you to be looking at. Funding policy considerations. You know, years ago, the term funding policy was rarely raised, right? What we did back then is we talked about actuarial assumptions as they existed within your actuarial reports. Over the years, as best practices developed, this idea of creating a funding policy in which you adopt a separate policy that sets forth the actuarial assumptions that you have adopted, the demographic assumptions, the economic assumptions, and the policy considerations as to why you're adopting those. Key to that is obviously a 5-year experience study. And so those are important. And I remind you that PA 202, which was adopted in 2017, now requires every plan to have a 5-year actuarial experience study done every 5 years. And so make sure you're tracking that on your calendar and aware of that. I would encourage everybody not to wait to the 5th year after the adoption of 2007 to go to the actuary, ask for a 5-year experience study, because obviously the actuaries are going to be a little buried and it's going to be difficult to get those out. So don't wait to the last minute on getting that done. But in light of the economic uncertainty as a result of the COVID-19 concerns, you may want to have some further discussions on your funding policy considerations and how the employer contributions are going to be impacted, what is the likelihood of the employer making its required contributions, and plan ahead for that and be aware of that. And then finally, if you've not taken a look at the Secure Act, it was adopted at the end of 2019. It's a federal law. It's primarily applicable to the private sector, but there are a couple of provisions that are applicable to the public sector. First and foremost is for individuals, the required minimum distributions, typically not a big issue in the public sector. In the public sector, most of our retirees always take their distributions as early as they can, but to the extent that you have a DC plan or even a 457 plan, but even within the defined benefit plans in some instances, you have to be aware that the age 70 and a half has now been changed to age 72 for individuals attaining 70 and a half after December 31 of 2019. So there is a change in that date. You want to make sure your plan documents, your 402 notice, your distribution notices have all been amended to reflect that change. And then there's, to the extent you have, again, a defined contribution plan or 457 plan, there are new provisions with regards to a 10-year deadline for beneficiary distributions, as well as the ability to have qualified birth or adoption distributions from those plans. So you want to make sure you're aware of those and your plan has been updated. And that's all I have for the legal report today. I will escape here and see if there's been any questions. Michelle, I'll share screen back to you. There we go.
Thank you, Michael. Next is elections of board members. Our final piece of business for today's meeting is election, conducting the virtual for board members present. Some unique challenges for us this year. Each plan member was provided an opportunity to submit the names of 2 voting delegates. Those delegates were previously sent an email link to the vote in today's board member elections, which also included the opportunity to authorize the nominating committee to vote for a board member by proxy. We have received a required number of proxies granted to the nominating committee. To proceed with today's election, I call the nominating committee chair, Nancy Belair, to conduct today's election.
Thank you, Jim. Before I get started, I wanted to double check. I see Christine's name on the screen. Christine, are you on the line? She had to call in. Christine? She might be muted. I mean, she looks like she's muted. Okay. Waiting for advice from Michelle or Michael. I see your name, but I don't hear a voice.
Christine is called in. I do see her listed as an attendee, but I do believe she called in on the attendee line. And on the attendee line, I don't believe you can unmute. All the attendees are muted.
Okay.
So I know there's the proposal to vote. She can send a response on the vote through the chat or question and answer portion at the bottom of the screen. So if there's a motion made and support, she can certainly submit and respond through that. Otherwise, she probably needs to call through as a panelist rather than as an attendee. I believe that's the problem.
So that means I should go, or that means I should wait?
Nope, go ahead. You're clear to go.
You just wanted to make it tricky, right? You knew I could probably follow the script, but the question is, can she spin it? Okay, yes, I can pivot. Hi, I'm Nancy Belair. Nancy Belair of the Monroe County Library System Healthcare Board, am chair of the nominating committee. Also serving on this committee were Bill Smith of the Clinton Township Retiree Healthcare Trust, Christine Cassani of the City of Warren Employees Retirement System. There were 2 board member seats whose terms expired this year. The seat held by the current board president, Jim Haddad, and the seat held by the current treasurer, Lori Siskind. The nominating committee has received letters of intent to serve on the MAPERS board and has conducted interviews with such individuals regarding their interest and qualifications to serve. After thorough review and consideration, it is the unanimous decision of the nominating committee to recommend the following individuals to serve as MAPERS board members for a term of 4 years. 1, the reappointment of James Haddad of the City of St. Clair Shores Police and Fire Retirement System. And 2, the reappointment of Lori Siskind of the City of Farmington Hills Employee Retirement System and the Oakland County Employees Retirement and Deferred Compensation Board. This is the fun part, guys. I will now ask for nominations from the floor. Should you choose to make a nomination from the floor, please submit your nomination through the Zoom app using the Q&A or chat features, or you may phone the MAPERS office at 734-944-1144, and you'll see that instructions are now on the screen. Are there any other nominations from the floor? Are there any other nominations for the office of board member from the floor? I will wait for 1 minute to allow nominations from the floor.
I've been asked while we're waiting for the 60 seconds to just go ahead and tell you a little bit more about the programming that we've been doing. Michael talked about the webinars that we've been having and listing them. They are on the MAPERS website, and the ones that were recorded, some of them have really wonderful information. So I encourage you to look at that. Someone also indicated that if you're not getting the information, to contact Michelle. And you would contact Michelle at mdoran, D-O-R-A-N, at mapers.org, and let her know you are not getting invites to the webinars, because those are good opportunities for education, and she can make sure that you get them. And the handouts and recordings of the past presentations are on the website. We are having another webinar 2 weeks from tomorrow. It's called Investing on the Right Side of Change. It's presented by Wells Fargo Asset Management, scheduled for September 29th. The registration information is on the events page of our website. We know that the education is an important part for Michigan Public Employee Pension Trustees, but so are the personal relationships that we all forge when we're getting together at the conferences. So it is our sincere wish that we move ahead and have in-person meetings, hopefully upcoming in 2021. Thanks.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Lori. Here's my next question. Michelle, are there any other nominations from the floor?
I do not see any nominations, Nancy, and nor were there any phone calls. And I do have Christine on my phone, so I think we should all be able to hear her.
Oh, fantastic. Seeing none, the nominations are closed. I would entertain a motion to elect James Haddad and Lori Siskind as board members by my fellow nominating committee members who have been authorized to serve as voting proxies by our fellow plan member delegates.
Hi, this is Christine Cassani, and I'd like to make a motion to elect Jim Haddad and Lori Siskind to the MAPERS board.
I, Bill Smith of the Clinton Township Retiree Healthcare Trust, second the motion.
Okay, based on the proxies received and granted to the nominating committee, the motion carries. Congratulations, Jim and Lori. Thank you very much. And thank you to the applicants. They were all wonderful. Thank you so much. This concludes the election. The nominating committee wishes to congratulate the members of the board and thank you all who participated in this year's election. I will now turn the meeting back over to Jim Haddad for closing comments. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Michelle, do I need a motion for adjournment, or Michael?
No, we do not.
Okay, then I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. If you have any questions for the board, I encourage you to continue to stay safe and healthy. We look forward to seeing you soon.
Stay safe, everybody.